If you join the two pictures, it will form a word. Matt can't answer that last night, so ask me to change the picture. I'll give you a chance.
Very much.
If you mix that word, if you add up the two pictures, you will end up with one word. If an adult gets an answer, please give the chance to the kids first. But if you have an answer, do you have an answer? Can you raise your hand? Do you have an answer? Well, yeah, that's right. That's kidney. The other picture, Matt able to get the picture because he's saying he already know the topic, but he can't get the picture of the baby. He says, baby me. Infant me. I told him, what's my topic? Please don't say the topic, okay? So, what do you think will be my topic this morning? About the kidney. What topic could you relate to a child and an adult?
Water.
No. It's about
Salt.
urinary tract infection. So in adults and kids, we can have urinary tract infection, and as I said, also in newborns, but it is rare in newborns to have urinary tract infection. Okay, so next. So another question. What is the size of a newborn kidneys? In centimeters.
Three.
Newborn.
Kuya Alex says 3. Ate Joy? 6? You're right. It's 6 centimeters in newborns. So how about in adults? Okay, nandiyan na. It's about 10 to 12 centimeters. So it's double than the newborn. So our kidneys lie in what area of our body? What area?
Lower.
Most of the time, we will answer abdominal area, but in reality, it is, it's at the back. It's retroperitoneal. So meaning it is behind our abdominal cavity. And again, in newborns, it's 6 centimeters long, 24 grams, and in adults, it's 12 centimeters long, weighing how many grams in adults? If it's 24 grams in the newborns, how many grams is it in adults?
40.
2 kilos.
No.
200.
500 grams.
24 in newborns, how many in adults? Ate, ano pong pangalan niya?
Ethan.
Ethan. What's your answer, Ethan? 48. Dinoble niya. No, it's at 48. 100 grams? Okay. Malapit na kayo sa 100 grams. 150. Right. 150. So, yeah, again, sinasabi na ko ng English. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll speak in English. Okay, for the newborns, it's 24 grams. For the adults, it's 150 grams. So, we have the prices na at Medji, Kuya Alex, and
Later.
Later. Nasa ba ito? Okay, next slide, please. So, what are the functions of our kidneys? Other side. So, this picture is the anatomy of our kidneys. I can circle what are the important parts of it. I'll be talking this morning. So, starting from the bottom, we have the urethra, the bladder, the ureters, and the right and then the left kidney. So, as you can notice, the right kidney is slightly lower than the left because why? Because in the right part of our abdominal cavity, we have the what organ? We have the liver. So that's why the right kidney is slightly lower than the left kidney. Okay, next slide please. So here's the function of our kidneys. It removes waste products, removes drugs from the body. So when you drink vitamins, the excess of it, we just urinate it. 3, it balances the body's fluids. 4, it releases hormones that regulate blood pressure. 5, it produces an active form of vitamin D and that promotes strong and healthy bones. And lastly, it controls the product of red blood cells. So the next slide shows us the upper versus the lower UTI. So in urinary tract infection, it's not just one kind of infection. So as you've seen a while ago, the anatomy part, we have the ureter, the bladder, the ureters, the urethra, the bladder, the ureters, and then the kidneys. So that area which has the abdominal part, I put a line on it so that we can delineate between the upper and then the lower. So the bladder and the urethra, when it is infected, it causes lower UTI. But upper to that area, it causes an upper UTI. So when your kidneys get infected, your ureters get infected, you have what is called, when the kidney is infected, you have pyelonephritis. When the ureters, you have ureteritis. And if you have bladder infection, you have cystitis. And then the urethra, you have the urethritis. That's composed of the upper and the lower UTI. Next. So, okay, recall of the nomenclature of UTI. Okay? Last test, if you remember, UTI involving the ureters or the kidneys. Upper or lower UTI? Upper UTI. Because in the picture, we started from the bottom. The start is the next slide. So, if the ureters are infected, you have ureteritis. If the kidneys are infected, you have pyelonephritis. And both is the upper UTI, consisting of the upper UTI. UTI involving the bladder or the urethra. If it's the bladder, it is called cystitis. And if it is the urethra, it is called urethritis. And it's composed of the blank UTI, lower UTI. Okay, next. So here's the individual risk factors why a boy or a girl, a woman and a man gets UTI. First, in the boys, increased risk if younger than 6 months and uncircumcised, temperature of more than 36, fever of more than 24 hours, absence of another source of infection. And in girls, generally increased younger than 1 year or less than 12 months, temperature of 39 degrees, fever more than 2 days, absence of another source of infection. Next. Next question. Why do girls more likely to develop UTI than boys? That's right, Ate John. We have a shorter urethra than the boys. So, more common in girls. What are the signs and symptoms? First is fever. This is for the kids. Fever could only be the manifestation of a urinary tract infection in kids, okay? Kasi it's different for adults and younger adults. So next slide. In newborns, it is much different. We have very non-specific symptoms in newborns. Since they are delicate, they cannot say what are painful in their body. They have these symptoms. Number 1 is poor feeding. A newborn, a very well child, suddenly stops latching or bottle feeding, and then we have what it calls poor feeding. So that's the first sign that we can see in a child. And then afterwards, if you have to check the urine of the child, that will be having a positive urine culture, and it will just show that the patient has UTI. So other symptoms could be vomiting, fever alone for older children, hypothermia instead of hyperthermia. Hypothermia is 36.5 degrees Celsius below, because in newborns, they don't have fever most of the time. They will present as hypothermic children. jaundice or yellow discoloration of the skin, lethargy or weakness, failure to thrive, and sepsis. So when you have sepsis or infection in the blood, the poor feeding, lethargy, it will just show like that. So next slide please. For the UI symptomatology, I just describe the other symptoms with regards to neonates, infants, children, and older children. So how about in adults? Okay, next. We have the different symptoms in adults. So if it's upper UTI, we have different symptoms. If it's lower UTI, we have different symptoms. So in lower UTI, or you have infection of the bladder or the urethra, what are the symptoms that we can have? First, we can have dysuria, or what we call painful urination. Next, we have frequency, increase in urination. Urgency, the feeling that you want to urinate even after urinating. And malodorous urine or foul-smelling urine, hematuria, blood in the urine. And suprapubic pain or pain in this area, and then urinary incontinence or the feeling that you still urine in your underwear. So if it is upper UTI or acute pyelonephritis, your kidneys are affected, you will experience flank pain or back pain instead of this area. And abdominal pain also, fever, and then vomiting. So that's the difference between adults and young children. So how do we diagnose UTI? First, we get the urine culture, urine analysis of the children, and then if there's a WBC that is high, more than 5, we culture it. So the gold standard for diagnosing UTI is urine culture. So I will not deal with it anymore. So what are the treatments of UTI? Of course, we treat it with antibiotics. We cannot just treat it not pharmacologically, because we already have infection in this kind of cases. So, next slide. Choice of antibiotic based on the agent and sensitivity pattern, route of administration based on patient's tolerance. So, if the patient cannot take the medication orally, she or he has to be admitted. And how many days? It should be 7 to 14 days based on patient's response. Next. Empirical antibiotic treatment if you know that the patient has already UTI. And next, antibiotic switch if after 72 hours of treatment the patient is not clinically bad. Okay, next slide. So use of probiotics and cranberries. Next. So the role of probiotics and cranberries remain inconclusive. So breastfeeding, next slide. Breastfeeding may reduce the risk of recurrent UTI. That's why we always recommend exclusive breastfeeding for newborns until 2 years of age or even older. Circumcision may reduce the risk of recurrent UTI. Okay, next. But what is the most important? Prophylactic water. And 8 to 10 glasses of water per day. But most of the time, what's our choices? This is the choice of most of the time. Okay, so most of the time, we prefer colorful, mouth-watering drinks instead of water. We end up picking the wrong choice for our own health. Now, let's put ourselves as the kidneys. We represent the kidneys. Water represents God. Our kidneys need 8 to 10 glasses of water for it to function well. How about us? We need Him, Jesus Christ, more than anything else in this world. So before I sit down, I hope that you learned something from this short lecture. And I want to share this verse from John 4, verse 14. which says, "But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water, welling up to eternal life." Thank you and happy Sabbath.
Amen.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Sister Aika, for the wonderful message that we've learned today. And now it's the time for us to separate by group, and the youth will, as usual, will be in the upper room, and the children in the small room.
Isa lang ang youth eh.